Welcome to this webinar, the Australian Groundwater Explorer, brought to you by the Australian Water School, care of IceWarm. Thank you, Eloise Nation, Bureau of Meteorology, and Elizabeth Carrara for being here with us. We're so glad you could join us. My name's Trevor Pillar, National Partnerships Manager for IceWarm, and look where you all are from. Majority Australia, but scattered right across Asia and Africa, and look at that, North and South America. Fantastic to have you with us. Appreciate you joining us. There's the free webinars coming up over the next month or two. There's so many of them, I won't go into them each one, but you can see it covers quite a big range of water management topics. Also some online courses there and face-to-face courses as you get down to the bottom of that page. I won't go into each one. Thank you for joining us, Eloise, and panelist Elizabeth from the Bureau of Meteorology there in, I can see you, Melbourne. Yes, good. Thank you both. Much appreciated. Your camera's working, and I presume your microphone is working.
I hope so.
Yeah. There we go. Yep, loud and clear, loud and clear. We're so glad you could join us. Eloise works with standardisation, as does Elizabeth, and spatial analysis of groundwater data. Eloise was involved in developing the National Groundwater Information System with nearly a million bores nationally. The really incredible thing, and what we want to bring out today, and that's what we're doing today, Eloise is going to be doing today, is to see how much we've brought out the data from all of the states and territories around Australia, which is a wonderful thing. And we'll see a lot more about how good that is as we go through this presentation. Well, it's great to have you both there. And Ben, I understand, is also helping. Ben is going to be presenting a webinar in the near future.
Camera's not. Ben.
There he is. Yeah. Come on board, Ben. Thank you. Thank you all three for being available there in Melbourne. And we're just delighted to hand this webinar over to you now, Eloise, and let's hear what you have to say. It's going to be interesting looking at the preview of the PowerPoint earlier. Thanks so much, Eloise. Right over to you.
So 10 years ago, they passed the Water Act and gave us this new role. So that we're now responsible for collating groundwater data and water data more generally that's held all across Australia. Because traditionally, water data is collected by many different agencies across Australia. So largely state water agencies, and that data is held in a variety of formats in their own databases. And so through the Water Act, the agencies supply their data to the Bureau. We then standardise it and make it available as groundwater products. And it gives us a huge insight into groundwater across Australia. And so all of this is based on collaboration. And what we do is publish it in a series of 4 national groundwater products. And these are all freely available from the Bureau website. And you'll see the URL down the bottom there. So www.bom.gov.au/water/groundwater. My colleague John Sharples gave an IceWarm webinar on these products back in May, and a recording of that's available from the IceWarm website. So I would encourage you to have a look at that webinar and get an introduction to all of our products. You can also have a look at the Bureau of Meteorology YouTube page. We've got quite a few groundwater videos there as well. So that's a good way to find out about what we're doing at the Bureau. But for today, I'm focusing on the Australian Groundwater Explorer. So the Australian Groundwater Explorer is a web mapping application that provides access to nationally consistent groundwater data. And there's a huge amount of groundwater data that's shared through the Explorer. So we've got bore data for 880,000 bores, and you can see a screenshot of this on the slide. We also have groundwater levels, salinity, hydrochemistry, and that comes from Geoscience Australia, as well as 3D visualizations. And that's something we've been going into more recently. So the Explorer lets you view and search for this data online, and then you can download it for further analysis. So today, I want to give you a demonstration of the Explorer to show you how you can access all of this data, how you can download it and use it for your own work. So to do this, I'm going to focus on a case study in the Border Rivers region. And so that's an interjurisdictional area between Queensland and New South Wales. And I've chosen this interjurisdictional area because it really highlights the utility of the Explorer in that it provides national groundwater data from the one location. So there are many groundwater portals out there, one for each state and territory, but this is the only national one. So I'm going to start by using the zoom tool to zoom into the Border Rivers region. And now the application expands out and you can start to get a feel for the region. So I've turned on the river region boundary that's in purple, and you can see in the centre is the Gwydir River. Goondiwindi, the town of Goondiwindi is in the centre, and Moree to the south. I've also got the bore locations on there in grey, and you can see that there are quite a few bores concentrated along the river, the Gwydir River, and then you have another concentration of bores in a band sort of through the centre of the region. And there are not many bores either to the east or west. So as I take you through this case study, I'd like us to imagine that we're hydrogeologists starting on a new project. So whether it's for an environmental impact assessment, a water resources assessment, or you're doing some research or modelling, there are some things you always do at the start of any project. So you start to get an understanding of the region in terms of the hydrogeology and the groundwater use, and then you want to access the data for that region. So that's what I'm going to take you through today. So I've just described the distribution of bores in the region. So what I might do now is to look at some contextual data sets that might explain the distribution. So I'm turning on some of the geology layers. So I'll start with the surface geology. And you can see you've got the alluvium following the Gwydir River, and that's where many of the bores are. But you also have bores in the sort of central region of the border rivers, and they're associated with Jurassic units that I suspect are part of the Great Artesian Basin, and we can confirm that in a minute by looking at some other data sets. And then you have fewer bores to the east and west, where you have the older Paleozoic sediments, and then to the west, where you have that Quaternary cover. So now if I have a look at the sedimentary basins layer, you can see we've got a large Mesozoic basin going through the region. And if I use the identity tool and click on the basin, you can see that it's the Surat Basin, which is one of the sub-basins of the Great Artesian Basin. So from here, you might want to look at why people are using groundwater, and that too might explain some of the distribution of the bores. So I've added the bore purpose layer, and I've also added the land use map layer. And so you can see along the river in green, the bores are mostly used for irrigation, and there are some monitoring bores as well in blue. Then in the central band of the region, you can see lots of stock and domestic bores in the yellow-orange colour, and that sort of corresponds to the grazing land uses. You also have some monitoring bores and water supply bores in that area as well. And then to the west, you've got dryland agriculture, and then back to the east, you have sort of forestry in green, and then conservation in purple, and not so many bores associated with that. So you can see really in this region that the distribution of bores is related to the groundwater resources, also related to the land use as well. Okay, so now we've started to come up with a bit of an understanding of the bores in the region. You might want to look at the access to data. And so we've got a map layer that shows you the locations of bores with water level data. And so I'm showing them on the map now. So you can see the light, and they're color coded by the amount of data available. So the light blue bores have less than 5 measurements, whereas the dark blue bores have more than 200 measurements. And so in this region, you can see there aren't that many bores with lots of measurements. In other parts of Australia, you get quite a few bores that have heaps of data. So in Moree to the south, for example, you can see a few more of those, as well as Toowoomba to the north. So what we can do now is to use the bore data viewer tool. Click on that, and then select one of the bores. And this is one of the bores that have quite a few measurements. and then have a look at the hydrograph for that bore. Now, this data is available both as graphs and as tables. So in dark blue, you can see the groundwater levels. We also have the rainfall trend that's in the light grey blue, so you can start to see the relationship between climate and groundwater level, as well as some long-term averages in the background. So below average conditions are in the red, average in white, and blue if that's above average. So you can look at the measurements through time and see the conditions sit in the historical record. And you can see for this bore, which is in the outcropping part of the Great Artesian Basin, that the groundwater levels seem to be quite closely related to the rainfall. So similarly, we can have a look at the salinity. And there's a map layer that shows the number of salinity measurements for each bore. So the light pink has 1 measurement, up to the dark pink with more than 10 measurements. This time we'll use the map selection tool and select a number of bores in the centre of the region. That then brings up a summary information about all of the bores selected. Then we'll click on a bore that has quite a few measurements, click the View Data button, and again we can see the data as both a graph and a table. So you can see for this bore, there's a bit of change through time in the salinity, and you're looking at about 1,000 to 2,000 microsiemens per centimetre. That's starting to get a bit saltier, but you can still use it for irrigation and stock watering and that sort of thing. Another thing we have is hydrochemistry data, and this data comes from Geoscience Australia. We don't have it for the whole country, we just have it for areas where GA has done some studies. And similar colour coding, the light colours have few measurements up to the dark colours with lots of measurements. So we can select a few bores, again view the data, this time only as a table, not as a graph, because there are so many different chemistry variables available. We've got major element chemistry, the field measurements, isotopes, metals, you name it, it's all covered there. And another data set we have access to is bore logs. So we've got 3 types of bore logs in the Explorer. There are construction logs, hydrostratigraphy logs, and lithology logs. So again, I'll use the map circle select to select bores that have lithology logs in the region. And you can bring up this data again as a table, or we also have bore log chart. And so you can see for this bore, you can have a look at the lithology and see that it's mostly sandstone, and you've got a hydrostratigraphy log, which is Cretaceous to Jurassic sediments of the GAB. And you can see that it's the bore's also screened in that unit.
Can I make a small interruption, Eloise? It's an interesting
Absolutely.
question coming up around this. It's just an enormous amount of data. It's fantastic.
I know, it's huge.
And it comes not just from BOM, it comes from Geoscience Australia and other sources. I mean, lots of sources, the state's sources, I guess. Well, there's a couple of questions just on the board there, on the Q&A board, you might see it there, from Thong Lith in Laos and also from Joel Giorgio. Maybe I'll just start with Thong Lith's. Do we categorise the types of groundwater for different uses, or do we divide the types of groundwater depending on the area or zone of the country?
Well, not in this product, but we have another product called
Right.
the Insight. And in terms of salinity, it has... we have categorised the bores in terms of beneficial use.
Yep.
So it indicates, you know, which bores are suitable for drinking and stock that sort of thing.
No, that's great. Yeah, no, that's excellent. So Thong Lith from Laos, thanks very much for that. There is another database which we can get. There's lots more products that we're doing. We'll have time for it in this webinar. Thanks, Thong Lith, for that. Joel Giorgio has asked, is there a plan to get more geochemistry data from other agencies?
Yes, we would absolutely love to do that. And so in the Bureau, there's a wider scoping study going on looking at the need for water chemistry data more generally. So a consultant has been in interviewing people and surveying people to find out what their needs are for water chemistry data. But we routinely get requests for more chemistry data, so we'd absolutely love to add more chemistry data.
Well, and you'll like the next question from Doug Wetherell then. Thanks, Joel, for that question. You've raised a really interesting question. As only a PhD from Flinders. Thank you, Joel. That's a really good question. And Doug, you mentioned hydrochem data, Eloise. Is that provided by Geoscience Australia? And what about the data collected by the states?
Yeah, so we don't so at present we only get the salinity data from the states. It's all about what's listed in the water regulations. That was the thing I was discussing on the first slide. So under the water regulations, this piece of legislation, it lists what type of data specifically we can request from different agencies. And at the moment for chemistry, I think we're only able to ask for salinity, and I think it's pH as well for groundwater.
We don't have the mandate to ask, but that doesn't mean we cannot plan for future work in that area. And given that we've tested this with Geoscience Australia, the most important thing is to have a proper data model and understand exactly what's in the state database or other agencies, so that we don't display data improperly.
Yep, no, thank you very much for that. Thanks a lot, Doug, for that question also. And follow-up questions, just don't hesitate to keep them coming. Look, while I'm on a roll here, thanks, Elisabetta and Eloise, that's great. Hi, Eloise, this is from Yuan Berrio. In Queensland, how does the board data compare to the recently released Queensland Globe? And are both databases linked? Does one database feed the other one sporadically, or are they disconnected projects?
No, not disconnected at all. So we get our data from the state agencies.
Yeah.
So I think in Queensland it's the Department of Natural Resources and Mines, is that correct?
Yeah.
And so they provide the data to us, they export it in NGIS format. And so their database is called the Queensland Groundwater Database. But I should emphasise that we don't have any of the CSG bores in our database. I'm not sure about the Queensland Globe. I know, so they may be included there, so there may be a difference.
Yeah, no, that's good. And look, everyone, thanks a lot for your questions. Still keeping on coming in from Alyssa Barron. Alyssa says that a recent search resulted in graphical bore logs mismatched to bore IDs and construction details. Do we know why this is occurring, or is that something new for yourself?
I suspect we did have an issue in the Northern Territory a couple of months ago, but we've since resolved it.
Right.
So if she's still experiencing the same problem, I would urge her to contact us at the groundwater mailbox.
Yep.
That's groundwater@bom.gov.au.
Yep.
And we'll absolutely look into it and see if we can iron out any technical difficulties.
And on that one, Alyssa, Eloise, Elisabetta, Ben, look, everyone listening, if you have questions that you want to ask outside of this, by all means, send them into us. We'll get them across to Eloise, Elisabetta, and Ben, and we can go from there.
And it's also good to have checks, so don't shy away from reporting things. We are definitely not perfect, and every time we find something, we'll try to our best.
Where would they find that chat line then, Elisabetta? Is it on the BOM website?
It's not a chat line, it's a mailbox, and it's groundwater@bom.gov.au.
That's great. Look, we'll leave the questions there for a minute. Let you go on with the presentation. Over to you, Eloise.
Thank you. Okay. So I just showed that we have access to these to the log data, and that's really important. An important input to constructing 3D models, which, for example, can go into groundwater models. But we're fortunate in the Groundwater Explorer to already have some of these 3D models. So in our region, as I discussed before, we've got the Great Artesian Basin, and as shown in the pinky colour here, that's where we have a 3D model available. So if you click on the 3D model viewer button, you can zoom to the extent of Australia and see all the 3D models that are currently available. We'll then choose the one for the Great Artesian Basin, and you can open it up. So our models are available as PDFs, which you download to get the full functionality. But because they're PDFs, it means that you don't need specialist software to be able to use them. So you can easily get Adobe Acrobat just off the internet, but most people have it on their computers. So these 3D PDFs are fully interactive. You've got access to contextual layers, as well as the hydrostratigraphic units that you can turn on and off. There's a functionality for generating cross-sections, and you can also change the vertical exaggeration. So let's zoom in to our study area again. And now I've turned off some of the contextual layers, stripped them back so you can actually see more of the hydrostratigraphic units. And you can see in our study area, the Cadna-Awi Hooray Formation is outcropping. So that's one of the aquifers. And I should have mentioned that our hydrostratigraphic units are coloured in terms of their hydrostratigraphy. So blue is for aquifers and brown is for aquitards. So we've got this important aquifer outcropping in the study area, which means it's an important place for recharge to the GAB.
And I would like to credit Ben with the work for the
yes,
3 PDFs. So, and also it was a good collaboration with Geoscience Australia.
No, that's a very good point, Betty. Sorry for stealing everyone's
No, not at all.
As I was saying before, we also have these cross-section tools. So you can take slices through the models, and you can start to see how your study area relates to the rest of the basin in 3D. Okay, so if we go back to 2D and back to our study area, another bit of functionality we have in the Explorer is the advanced search. So for example, you can really narrow down, if you were interested in getting only bores with a particular set of data, you could use the advanced search to do that. And the search includes both spatial characteristics as well as attributes. So I've built up a search here that looks for bores only in the Border Rivers region, only within the Great Artesian Basin water resource area, and they have to have lithology logs, hydrostratigraphy logs, water levels and salinity. And that's returned for me 49 bores. So with that data set, you can export it as a spreadsheet and use it for offline analysis. Now, that spreadsheet is only going to give you a summary of the data. If you actually want all the data sets yourself, you need to use the download panel, and you can download the data by state and territory or by river region and in a number of different formats. And these download packages will give you absolutely all the data. So that's the bores, bore logs, water levels, salinity, hydrostratigraphy, as well as some aquifer boundaries and groundwater management areas. So there's a huge wealth of data when you do the download.
It's huge. It's huge. I'm interrupting you again, but interesting questions coming in here, both from the US and also from New South Wales. Stephen Amponsa in New South Wales has said, given the various users and their different impacts on groundwater, how do you signify the quality of groundwater?
So the Explorer, it's mainly a data repository and allows you to explore the bores and the associated information with some background information, but we don't do any analysis at the point of the quality of the water. I understand that you would like, because we don't know the purpose of the use, it's very difficult to create a quality fit for a specific purpose. So this product, it's only, you get your own data and then you do your own analysis.
Salinity, did you mention salinity? So in terms of quality, you do have some measures of salinity?
Yeah, we do have salinity, we do have also chemistry, but we don't specify for which use or is the groundwater fit for purpose. That will require a more in-depth analysis. Before to be, for example, fit for drinking, you need to understand if there are any elements that may be affecting human health, and we are not allowed to do that. So we don't give advice on fit for purpose of drinking water, for example.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, thank you for your question. Hang on there, don't move anybody. We'll just let Eloise go through the next part of the presentation. Right back over to you again, Eloise.
Excellent, thank you, Trevor. So if you need even more data than you'll find in those download packages, you can actually get a copy of the National Groundwater Information System. So that has the data for all of the bores in Australia. So 880,000 bores. And to get access to this, you do need to send a request to the email address that we've been quoting, groundwater@bom.gov. So once you've downloaded the data, that's when you can start to do your own analyses and derive a bit more insight from the data. And so what I've got here is a selection of the work we've done at the Bureau using the data from the Explorer, just to show you what's possible. So we've got an example here from the Limestone Coast in South Australia, where we've done an analysis of groundwater level trend at bores. We've also got an example here of a Piper plot using the hydrochemistry data from the GAB. So you can use that to characterise the hydrochemistry of the waters. We've got another example here where we've interpolated the water table surface for the Melbourne region. And our final example is a study of groundwater surface water interaction. So we've plotted the groundwater levels in orange and compared them to the river levels in blue. And that example's from the Namoi region. And you can see over time how the interaction changes. So now I thought I'd present something that's quite topical at the moment, the New South Wales drought, and presenting how you can use the Explorer to understand the impact of drought on groundwater resources. So I've got a map here from the Bureau of Meteorology showing the rainfall for this year as rainfall deciles. And you can see for New South Wales that for most of the state, they had very much below average. And in some areas, they even had the lowest rainfall on record. So if we go back to the Explorer and go to southern New South Wales and have a look at the Coleambally irrigation area, we can select one of the bores in that region and have a look at its hydrograph. If we look at the recent year, when we've been experiencing a drought, you can see that levels are particularly low. And again, in green, I've highlighted the conditions during the Millennium Drought. And you can see for this hydrograph, there's a real seasonal pattern of pumping and recovery. And you can see the levels during the current drought are as low as they got to in the Millennium Drought, both in the pumping period and also in the recovery period. So if you download this data, you can do more analysis yourself and show even more insight. So now I've downloaded some water level data. This time it's for a different site, this time in the Lachlan alluvium, so a little bit further north, and plotted up the groundwater levels. And you can again start to look at those, the effect of pumping on the groundwater levels. So you see the peaks during the winter months when you've got recovery, and then the troughs during the summer months when you've got drawdown due to groundwater extraction. Now in normal years, recovery occurs over about 6 to 8 months, but in the recent drought, the recovery period has been greatly shortened to only about 3 months. That's because farmers have had to use groundwater early because of the shortages in surface water. And that brings me to the end of our presentation. Yeah. So I'd just like to say thank you for listening to us today. And I've got that URL to our website on the screen, also our email address. And I would encourage you to send us emails, to have a good look at our products. And really, we're really interested in continual development and improvement on our products. So if you've got any suggestions, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's fantastic. We've got tons of questions here. And this whole thing started actually about a year ago, if I remember rightly. I was looking at the exhibition hall of Biennial Australasian Groundwater Conference and came across both of you with all this data. And I went, we should do a webinar on this. So a year later, here we are. And so thank you very much for this. It's been absolutely brilliant. Where to start? There's a couple here on yield data. So Russell, I think, yes, from New South Wales, that's good. And also Karen Johnston, a presenter for Ice Warm. Thanks for joining us, Karen and Russell, but I appreciate your question there. Are there bore yield data available in this database? Karen says, I may have missed it, but is yield data available for these bores? That's two questions.
At the moment, yeah, we don't include yield data, although it is something that people have requested, but I think it would need quite a change to the database schema, and it's potentially something we could scope out in the future.
We have a data set in the GeoFabric. That is another product from the Bureau, and these had some surfaces of aquifer with bore yield, but this data is just the same data that the states would have. So we have bore yield from the Victorian Aquifer Framework data sets throughout Victoria.
Yep, no, that sounds great. Doug asks, Doug Weatherall, are there any plans to enable download filtered by a shape file or list of bore names rather than bulk downloads of the entire state?
Absolutely.
/GMU, see that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're currently one of our colleagues is working on a project to make all of our data available as web services. And as part of that project, he wants to develop a web processing surface that would make it possible for people to, cut the data to their areas of interest.
Yep.
So timelines for that project.
Maybe a year away.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. That sounds like
unfortunately, this is the limitation of the current application, but we will work on it. Maybe we'll do another presentation too.
Do that. We'd love that. No, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. Yes. All right. Let's. Joel makes a comment. Oh, looks like Victoria are better at recording data than New South Wales. Take that as a comment. Thank you, Joel. That's a very, very good. Yeah. Also. Denai has asked, since you're relying on state agencies to send data through, how often is the database updated?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I guess there are two main types of data. So there's the bore data that comes from the National Groundwater Information System. That's relatively static, so it's only updated once a year because it only has things like when new bores are drilled and bore logs. But the time series data, so the water level and the salinity, is currently updated twice a year, but we're working on a project to go to monthly updates, and I believe we're hoping to go monthly in about March of next year.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
good.
The states send us the data monthly, but at the moment we are only updated twice a year. We need to automate our processes, but around March.
Yep. No, thanks, Denai from Rockwater in WA. And also, I said earlier, Russell was from New South Wales. Anyway, nice to have you on board, Russell, from the Levay Environment Services in South Australia. Let's keep cracking on here. Reen Habermill.
Yes, I should say hi to Reen. I think I saw him saying hello to me in the chat. So
he does, and he asks a question, which you'll see further down. You did not show, Reen says, you did not show geophysical logs. BMR logged 1,500 artesian bores in the GAB, including gamma ray, neutro, collar, locator logs, SP, resistance, etc. So you probably understand where he's coming from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I know.
Thanks, Reen. Appreciate it.
An expert on the GAB. Unfortunately, we don't have access to that sort of data. We don't have any immediate plans to be incorporating that into the Explorer, but I guess it's something we could bear in mind for the future.
Another great comment from Reen is, could you include scale bars on your map figures to help people not familiar with those areas? I think that's
yes, absolutely. I get what you mean, just on the screenshots, because on the Explorer itself, there is a scale bar.
I have seen the scale bar, but not on the screenshots. That's how it works,
Presentations, I can definitely do that.
Great, A great comment. Thanks a lot, Reen. That's really good. Stephen and Ponce also ask, how do you address issues and uncertainties before making use of the groundwater data?
Well, currently, we just, I guess, publish the data as we receive it from the states.
Right.
But we are working on a project. And actually, having said that, some of the states do provide data quality flags to go with their data. So they say, you know, if the results are spurious or whether they've got confidence in them. But we're working on a project as well to do our own QA/QC analysis. And this is a collaboration, or to date has been, with Tim Peterson from Melbourne Uni.
Right.
And we're hoping within the next year to be adding those QA/QC flags to at least the water level data.
Yep. Right. Yeah, sounds good. So there's another one here from Yuan Berio. She's from Age Consultants in Brisbane. Is it possible to access the data using WMS or WFS live layer so that it can be seen directly inside ArcGIS, QGIS, MapInfo, etc.? Can one be made?
Yeah, so this is the project that I was talking about just before.
Right.
Web services project, and it's something we're really looking forward to being able to do. To get that functionality of publishing the data as a WMS, I think it'll be it's closer than getting the web processing service. So I'm hoping in the next 6 months. I don't know, Betty, if you've got any more information
into
on
the
that.
project. I know that it's we have the project going on at the moment. It depends more on the data team people, but yes, we know that it's a requirement. It would make lots of people life much easier to have a web service.
Right. On a similar note, Praveen has asked, can we import this GIS shapefile of our area in Explorer? Can we extract the data from it and also working with it in the GIS environment?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you download the data using one of those data packages, two of the formats, or actually all of the formats, are spatially enabled, so you'll be able to view the data.
But you can't see it into our application.
Right. Praveen also asked, do you have planned to add the rain gauge station in Explorer so that people can validate the water level of the bore?
Yeah, so we haven't actually thought about that, but it might be something to bear in mind. So at the moment, as you saw, we just present the rainfall trend data on the hydrographs, and that's something we extract from a related project, the
Australian Water Balance Landscape
Right.
Balance.
Yeah. But it might be something to bear in mind. And
So we use a gridded product to come up with the cumulative rainfall residual line in the hydrograph. And if you're interested, just send us an email. The data set is available, and we could share the rainfall on a gridded database, on a gridded format.
Craig Bagnall from Catalyst Environment in New South Wales has asked an interesting question. There is a large amount of data reported to government agencies from the private sector under conditions of planning, consents, mining projects, etc. Are there plans to integrate this somehow in the future? It's a really interesting question, isn't it? A lot of data right there.
I think I might hand this to Betty, because it's something I know she's been working on. So I think she's best placed to answer it.
It depends very much if that data is supplied under the Water Act. Some of the coal seam gas data sets are not available under the Water Act, and so we cannot go outside. But at the moment, we are working with other government agencies and just giving them the opportunity to use our database for their own reporting. So if they want, we could use the same format and the same way we collect the data to help them collect the data. For example, most of the environmental impact analysis are at this point in time in PDFs. We could provide our formats and integrate it back. But as a bureau itself, we don't have that power to request that data.
Yep, no, understandable. Well, I think we're going to have to leave it there. We could go on all day like this, and it's been fantastic. It's a huge topic.
Thank you, Trevor.
done a
very
really great job.
Questions from the
absolutely.
public. Huh?
Finally, free webinars coming up, a few in groundwater, a few there in gender equality, and also radar rainfall data, and some online courses. Go onto our website and you'll see on the Australian Water School website and the IceWarm website ways to go into that. Thank you all for joining us. It's been fantastic to have so many join us from right across the world. And mostly thank you to Eloise, Betty and Ben for all your work on putting this together. We look forward to doing this again with BOM and more often, we hope. Thanks again, everybody. It's fantastic. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.